At number 10 is Klitzplik. Just put the name up on the screen, please, because I can't pronounce that. This guy, believe it or not, is actually a descendant of Kal-El. This weird little dude hails from far in the future, around the 67th century to be more specific, but he is immortal, so he's also encountered as far into the future as the 853rd century. He is also known to be a fifth dimensional being, which means that he can explore dimensions beyond the understanding of any normal humans, including myself. I don't get it. And I'm not alone, most heroes wouldn't even understand it either. He has all the classic Kryptonian powers, but due to his bloodline including genes from a whole other race of superpowered beings, this future version of Superman also has 5D vision, which means that he can share his thoughts with others in real time, among other things. And he uses a weapon called the Hyperpoon, which is a hilarious name for a weapon that functions beyond the means of our comprehension. It's basically just more 5D stuff.
Number 9. Flashpoint Zatanna. This version of Zatanna Zatara comes to us from the Flashpoint universe. In this reality, Zatanna looks like a hardcore biker chick. She has an arm sleeve tattoo and sports some very low-rise leather pants, and wears a leather vest over what appears to be a leather bikini top. Her hair is shorter, her nails are painted dark, and she wears a black choker. She also drives a motorcycle. Sadly, as badass as she looks in this reality, she still ends up defeated and dead after a fight with Enchantress.
Next up at number 8 we got Carrie Kelly. The non-canonical Batman The Dark Knight Returns introduced us to a female version of Robin named Carrie Kelly. She was a 13-year-old who was saved from muggers by an old and semi-retired Batman, and she is inspired to spend her lunch money on a Robin costume and hunt down her hero. Frank Miller himself noted in an interview that she would be the hero he would want to see the most in a DC movie at some point, so hopefully this ends up happening.
Number 7. Flashpoint Starfire. Not everyone may love the idea of Starfire being a villain, but you can't deny that being bad looks good on Starfire. In the Flashpoint timeline, Corey joined Wonder Woman's army as one of her female Furies. This version of Starfire features a similar look to her main timeline counterpart. She is one of those weird 90s looking face and hair pieces that I love so much. I don't know why I love them, because I feel like in reality they would really look terrible on people. She is also covered in a costume that defies logic, featuring just swirls of purple flame to cover her. And she is also wearing some seriously amazing thigh-high boots. In this reality, her and Dick Grayson end up against one another, and a trap that he lays results in her death.
Coming in at number 6 we have Calorie Queen. Often my nickname when I go out for sushi with my friends. I have really nice friends. Calorie Queen debuted in Superboy number 212 as the female version of Matter Eater Lad. Her voracious appetite is the result of her Bismolian ancestry, but it wasn't enough to get her accepted into the Legion of Superheroes, so she joined the Legion of Super Rejects instead. Don't take me too seriously on this one, but you should all know by now that when something revolves around food, I gotta put it on a list.
At number 4 is Jordan Elliott. This is one of my personal favorites of these future versions of Superman because it's a rare example of a future Kal-El hanging up the mantle of Superman and actually living the existence of a mortal man, which I think is a pretty cool glimpse into the character and how he would act if his life were simple and much less influential. His motivation to do this is that he actually ends up killing Mr. Mcginnis, which thank goodness, so I don't have to say the guy's name anymore. Who he kills after the annoying little dude lays out a number of bad things to happen in Superman's life. In a fit of shame, Superman voluntarily walks into a room containing gold kryptonite, which strips him of his powers permanently. He then takes on the name of Jordan Elliott after his father Jor-El, and marries Lois Lane in anonymity. And honestly, I'm happy for the dude, because we don't have to deal with that little Mcginnis guy anymore, right? And also, Superman's done enough. At number 1 is Superman Prime. This has got to be the most powerful and iconic futuristic version of Superman from the comics, and don't get this mixed up with Superboy Prime either, that's a whole other guy. Superman Prime appears in the DC 1 Million series and sets out at the end of the 21st century to explore the cosmos. He then returns briefly in the 700th century, that's roughly 70,000 years later, and spends his time in his new Fortress of Solitude, which is the sun. Finally, another 10,500 years later in the 853rd century, he comes back again, this time with a totally golden makeover, and creates a new Lois Lane from scratch along with some other key players from his old life. This version of Superman is just completely overpowered and more of a god than many other iterations of the hero, giving us a glimpse into the vast expanse.
Number 10. What If Sorcerer Supreme? In the What If series, we got an issue that explored the idea of what would happen if Tony Stark became Sorcerer Supreme in place of Stephen Strange, and was forced to do battle with the Dread Lord of the Dark Dimension, Dormammu. Oddly enough, this isn't the only alternate future where Tony ends up as Sorcerer Supreme. Maybe we'll talk about that later. It's actually just one of them. Here, both Stark and Strange are in a car accident together, which robs Stephen of his ability to use his hands as a surgeon. Tony swears to fix Stephen's hands, and the two set out on a quest, which sets Stark down a path to meeting and training with the Ancient One, instead of Stephen doing that. After becoming the Ancient One's disciple and defeating the evil Baron Mordo, Stark becomes the new Sorcerer Supreme, and is forced to do battle with Dormammu, who plans on, of course, invading Earth. Stark makes for himself a suit of armor to help him defeat Dormammu, which combines both Tony's knowledge of technology and the mystic arts. Number 9. Iron Man 2020. Iron Man 2020 is both an event and a character. The editorial name was given to a different Iron Man, Andro Stark. Andro Stark, aka Iron Man 2020, was Tony's secret brother and the natural-born heir of the Stark family. Whereas it was later revealed that Tony was actually adopted to kind of help cover up what had really happened with Andro and to basically protect the firstborn Stark. Andro would end up taking up the mantle of Iron Man in the future year of 2020. Although now that would actually be the past, because it's 2022 at the time of this recording, and at the time of the event it was the present because it was 2020. The original Iron Man 2020 comic was actually published in the 90s, so at the time 2020 was very much in the future. So for those of you trying to tell me 2020 is the past, I know, but at the time, it's the future. In the event Iron Man 2020, Andro takes up his brother's mantle as he fights against the uprising of machines. Tony at the time felt he was more machine than man, and Andro basically uses this revelation of Tony's to discredit him, taking his place and becoming Iron Man in his stead. In the end, Andro would basically be driven mad while trying to save humans from machines by attempting to take control of all life, both organic and AI, in order to protect them. Don't worry though, because Tony would defeat Andro and kind of put him in a dream state to make him hopefully be happy until he wakes up and realizes all of the things he thinks he's been living have been a lie, which will probably not be good. I don't think that's happened yet though. And friends, before we move on to our next spot on this list, if you are enjoying our content here, why not head on over to Facebook and follow us there. We have lots of bonus content coming your way, giveaways and other good stuff, so go on over there and click that follow button.
Number 8. Kiyoshi Morales. When a group of 5 Captain Americas from different realities are brought together in Captain America Corps number 1 from 2011, we get a look at Kiyoshi Morales, the great grandnephew of Luke Cage, and he is the 25th century's Commander A. Kiyoshi is a much more physically imposing character, standing at what looks like almost 7 feet tall, and he was definitely the most physically imposing Captain America among the Captain Americas gathered by Toph Key. Instead of a vibranium shield, Kiyoshi's suit can generate energy shields on each arm, which resemble the normal Captain America vibranium shield, kind of like Captain America 3099 from number 10. His suit is much more advanced as well, as you'd expect from the 25th century Captain America. For example, it features a neuro web, which allows him to tap into wireless systems and stored information. He had all the enhancements we'd expect from a Captain America, and he is just a super cool character who I really hope we get to see more of in the future. But for now, he's definitely my favorite of the Captain America Corps members. Number 7. Shannon Carter. Spider-Girl, May Parker's timeline, otherwise known as Earth 982, presented a brighter future for Marvel than the world of 2099 suggested. In the MC2, Sharon Carter's cousin, Shannon Carter, idolized Captain America as she grew up. Now as an adult, Shannon worked as a tour guide for the Avengers Mansion, but eventually she pushed herself to her physical limit, created miniature Captain America shield weapons, and she was invited to join the next generation of Avengers. Shannon took on the American Dream persona in tribute to Cap, but when she finally met and saved her idol, Steve was so impressed that he gave Shannon an indestructible shield too. So while she did have a different name, she was ultimately another version of Captain America, and an alternate future version too. she also kicked butt, so does that. Number 6. Danielle Cage. On Earth 15061, Danielle Cage, the daughter of both Luke Cage and Jessica Jones, would eventually grow up to become the Captain America of her time. And let's think about this. The subsonic flight and superhuman longevity of her mother, with the bulletproof skin of her father, plus the superhuman strength, durability, stamina, speed, and healing factors of both of them? Yes, Danielle Cage doesn't just use the shield of Captain America, she is the shield, and she is an awesome Captain America. She arguably does not even need her shield, which is a controllable drone replica of the original. Unfortunately, we don't really get to see much of this version of Danielle Cage, but we know Danielle is a force to be reckoned with, and as such, she's a Captain America who deserves to be on this list. Number 5. Mutant X. The Captain America of Earth 1298, first appearing in Mutant X number 15 in 1999, was a mutant with no name who took on the role after Steve Rogers was brought to an end by a Sentinel attack. His past was unknown except for the fact that he was experimented on by the government due to having latent mutanacy. This captain wasn't exactly stable. He lacked control over his mutant powers, which resulted in him accidentally ending the lives of both the Six and most, if not all, of the Avengers. What were his powers though? This Cap was still given the Super Soldier Serum, which I'm assuming gave him all of the same powers as Steve Rogers, but his mutant abilities included the ability to increase his mass and strength, telepathy, force field generation, crazy energy-based powers, and near invulnerability. His abilities activating caused enough of a galactical upset that it woke the Beyonder, who was sleeping inside the planet's core. So yeah, he went rampaging and was a total psychological mess, but that doesn't change the fact that he was absolutely very powerful. Number 4. 2099 Captain America. First appearing in 2099 Manifest Destiny, this Captain America was frozen again after a war happened that ended the heroic age in his timeline. He was brought to Alchemax, and after being thawed out, he told Miguel O'Hara all about it. Now this Captain America was eventually given Thor's hammer Mjolnir to symbolize the beginning of a new world. That's right, it's an official Thor cap. Alongside Miguel O'Hara, Captain America assembled the various 29 heroes into a new team of Avengers and led them into a battle in space against the President Doom of 2099. Yes, he does look like a very 90s amalgamation of the two characters, but his power was nothing to scoff at. Neither was the inspiration he fired up in people's hearts. Definitely a fantastically powerful alternate future version of Captain America. Number 3. Another 2099 Cap. But wait, there's more! In Marvel 2099, Captain America was a female named Roberta Mendez, or this version of Captain America was. Roberta was a bit different from most other captains on this list. Instead of joining a government-sponsored research program, Roberta was forcefully given the Super Soldier Serum by her husband, Harry. She gained all the powers afforded to a super soldier, and she did indeed become a new Captain America, although she was under the control of the Alchemax Corporation, which is a massive science-based company in this future world. It kinda gets worse for Roberta, as she is actually completely unaware of her separate Captain America persona thanks to brainwashing. Luckily, she did actually eventually rebel against Alchemax and then legitimately became Captain America, taking on the ideals that made her predecessor, or predecessors, I guess, so much better.
Number 2. Andro Stark. Andro Stark is another Iron Man who hails from the 2099 reality. Not the main 2099 reality though. So many alternate timelines. This version of the alternate future Iron Man is actually Tony's grandson, Andros. Andros travels back in time in an attempt to stop his grandfather from creating Vortex. Vortex was initially created by Tony to protect humanity, but ended up turning on humankind instead, infecting the internet and threatening the existence of all human life on Earth in the future. However, in a strange twist, Andros actually ends up learning during his journey back to the past that it was his jaunt back in time that would actually result in the creation of the Vortex virus. The future crisis ends up being averted thanks to this revelation, but unfortunately it also causes Andros to cease to exist. At least this specific version of Andros who traveled back in time. There could very well still be an Andros out there somewhere in the world, one who, you know, didn't have a reason to travel back thanks to the future being saved. This future version of Iron Man 2099 does not appear in the comics, but instead is from the animated series Iron Man Armored Adventures. Number 1. Dr. Anthony Stark. Coming full circle now, from 10 to 1. As I said, what if Sorcerer Supreme Tony Stark is not the only one out there? There's also the 2099 AD alternate future Tony Stark, who also ends up as Sorcerer Supreme, known as such or sometimes as Dr. Stranger or Dr. Anthony Stark. Although once again, although this is 2099 AD, this is not The main 2099 reality, this is another splintered continuity. This future version of Tony shows up in Infamous Iron Man when Dr. Doom, as the aforementioned infamous Iron Man, appears into the future. However, this future version of Tony would also appear initially in the 2014 all-new X-Men annual, where Tempest would run into him when she attempted to return to the reality where her husband and daughter existed. However, Stark would inform her that this reality no longer existed, and he would actually urge Tempest to return to her original timeline, the continuity of Earth 616. Number 10. Legends of the Dead Earth. In Legends of the Dead Earth, the surviving human population of Earth are all basically aboard a spaceship, which drifts kinda aimlessly through space as it's lost its heading. The humans have also been on the spaceship so long, they basically forgot there's even a world outside. However, Batman rises up among them to become a hero and help them once again find their way. This Batman is not the Batman, Bruce Wayne, but instead a well-meaning citizen on the spaceship who learns the truth about how they are basically lost. He takes up the mantle of the hero from old folklore, known as Batman, and inspires a girl aboard the ship named Tris Plover to help him in his fight to fix the ship's navigation system. It's actually a really depressing story though, because in the end she's like, man, I'm not gonna be alive to get to this planet. What's the point of anything? Number 9. Saint Batman. Saint Batman was the name Azrael took up in one of the Dark Multiverse alternate realities. Here, Azrael had taken up the cape and cowl in Batman's stead after his back was broken by Bane, but refused to give back the mantle, and instead of Batman defeating Jean-Paul and taking the mantle back, Azrael basically won that fight, keeping it. He turned Bruce into a shadow of his former self, removing all his limbs and keeping him alive through kind of a cybernetic life support thing, which also seemed to cause Bruce extreme pain. Years later, Bruce is saved by the son of Talia al Ghul and Bane. However, it turns out in rescuing Batman and later defeating Azrael, they really just swapped out one awful tyrant for an even worse one. And friends, before we head on to the next point, if you are loving this list, we would love if you headed over to our Facebook page and gave it a like and a follow. It really does help us out over here at YouTube, so thank you!
At number 8 is Superman Secundus. In the DC 1 million timeline, Superman Secundus is explained to be Superman Prime's direct heir, having founded the Superman dynasty and successfully fighting off the Tyrant's son, as well as Solaris, among others. Then in All-Star Superman, another future Superman named Superman 2 appears, who seems to just be the same version of the hero as Superman Secundus, just in a different iteration. This future stuff gets a little bit complicated, but this future Superman seems pretty powerful, and since he's known to be the son of Superman Prime, I felt I just needed to throw him on the list. At number 7, we've got Connor Kent, or FKA Superboy. This future version of Superman is pretty unique in that he's actually a clone of both Superman and Lex Luthor. He spends his youth in fear that he'll turn out more like Lex Luthor in all the worst ways, and unfortunately that's actually what happens. As Connor grows up into a more mature hero, he gains a reputation as a brutal version of Superman who uses extreme force against his enemies with little to no remorse. But later on during the Infinite Crisis storyline, we learn that this future Connor Kent is actually a clone of an early version of himself, which is a relief to him, but doesn't make much sense. Does it make sense? I don't know. Anyway, he's not Lex Luthor, at least. At number 6, we have Adam Ken plus 477 SPMN. The future is horrible at coming up with names apparently, but anyway, this future version of Superman is pretty cool because he kind of comes across as so futuristic that he's actually a much more complex being, but also a sort of simpler and stripped down being than Superman is now in a weird way, which is how it seems like the future would actually be if you went forward far enough. In Superman number 400, we see a future where Superman has died and his descendants have reproduced with humans, creating a new type of super being. But when they accidentally create a massive vortex in space, one of their leaders, Adam Ken, elects himself to plug it while the rest of them turn themselves into energy for some reason, to protect themselves. Anyway, the plan works and the vortex is mended, leaving only Adam Ken, we'll just call him Adam, leaving Adam as the only living being in the universe. So he thinks, until he meets his Eve. At number 5 we have the Dcau Superman from Batman Beyond. Only aging slightly, leaving some gray in his hair, this version of Kal-El is actually turned evil by Starro the Conqueror, who influences his actions over time to fit his evil agenda. But before this is found out, Superman leads the Justice League Unlimited for a while into the future, even inviting Terry McGinnis, aka Batman Beyond, into the League. It's good he does this too, because Batman becomes the one who frees Superman from Starro's grasp down the line. This version of Superman is a more experienced and stronger hero, and although he's tricked by a villain into doing some evil deeds, this isn't a list ranking power or wit. This version of Superman is just one of the more well-known and respected, and I figured he at least had to go in the top 5.
Number 4. Nubia. Nubia is the alternate Wonder Woman from Earth 23, the same Earth as Calvin Ellis's Superman. There are a few different versions that are super hot when it comes to Wonder Woman, who herself is just a stunner, and Nubia is definitely one of them. Not only is she as noble and good as her main continuity counterpart, working with her Earth's Justice League, but her costume is also killer. I personally especially love how strong she looks and love her sporting her metallic armored costume, complete with a silver metal chest piece slash belt with built-in abs. Nothing says sexy like silver metal abs.
At number 3 is the Superman from the Dark Knight Returns storyline. One of the most iconic storylines involving both Superman and Batman takes place in a future where the government, aka Lex Luthor and Brainiac, has control over him, and they force Superman to carry out missions for them as a kind of superpowered contractor. A brainwashed superpowered contractor, that is. Seeing this from afar, Bruce Wayne decides he has to venture into the dangerous territory of mortal versus alien combat, taking on Superman 1v1. Luckily, Clark Kent comes back from his brainwashing, but only after a huge battle between the two former friends.
Number 2. Dick Grayson. Helena isn't the only one to carry on Batman and Catwoman's legacy on Earth 2. Let's not forget that before Helena was born, Batman had an adoptive son in the boy wonder known as Robin, aka Dick Grayson, often known as the original Robin across many different worlds. On Earth 2, Dick Grayson would end up taking his adoptive father's mantle before Helena did, and operate as Batman for a time. He settles down with Barbara Gordon, and the two even have a son together who they name John. Dick, however, loses the use of his legs when he becomes paralyzed by the Joker shooting him through the stomach, which damages his spine. Sound familiar? Dick would later become Oracle. In this reality, Barbara ends up as a cop who gets shot and dies while attempting to help her family flee Darkseid's invasion. Their son John grows up to become his Aunt Helena's sidekick, Robin. Super cute. I like it. Not Babs' death though. I don't like that. That's not nice. Number 1. Terry McGinnis. When it comes to Batman, there are actually a lot of people who would be suited to don the cape and cowl. Sometimes in his stead, and other times as those who would take up the mantle after he dies or he retires. In the case of Terry McGinnis, he was pretty much created to become the new Batman. Using Bruce's own DNA, Amanda Waller designed Terry as part of her project Batman Beyond. She basically overwrote the reproductive DNA of Terry's father and chose the McGinnis family to create the modern genetic Bruce Wayne duplicate, because their psychological profiles were close matches to Bruce's own parents, Thomas and Martha Wayne, which means that, you know, when Terry grows up he should be like pretty much a perfect replica. Even more so if his parents had been assassinated like Amanda wanted, but didn't work out for Waller there. Probably for the best though. I don't think you should assassinate people's parents just to turn them into Batman. That seems pretty messed up, even for Amanda Waller.
Number 10, 3099. Although this version of Captain America is not native to any comic books, being from the Marvel Future Fight game, he is still probably one of the sweetest looking Captain Americas we have ever seen, and he is from the future, so a win-win. This Cap is James Rogers, presumably an ancestor of Steve Rogers, and he wields a shield that seems to be made of pure energy that can do multiple different things. By watching some of his moves from the game, James can do all the normal Captain America things, but his shield can create a force field bubble around James. It is also able to duplicate itself and become multiple shields at once to attack multiple enemies and give James protection while other shields are bouncing around doing crazy stuff. The story reason for his existence is that in a fight between an Ultron under the control of Red Skull and modern day Captain America, Iron Man, and Black Widow, a portal to an alternate future dimension opens up, and the alternate 39 future versions of those three heroes come through and they fight against their originals. I don't really care what the excuse is for having them. All the versions of these 3099 heroes are totally awesome, even if only in their designs. Number 9, Sharon Rogers. Oh look! It's another Marvel Future Fight version of Cap. I'm sorry, I promise this is the last one, I promise. In an alternate universe where Captain America was never frozen in ice at the end of World War II, Steve Rogers and Peggy Carter celebrated V-Day with a private marriage ceremony and some alone time. After the couple's honeymoon, when Peggy was assigned to South Korea, the couple welcomed the birth of their daughter Sharon. Following in her heroic parents' footsteps, Sharon soon became an agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. herself and eventually took over the role of Captain America. Tony Stark presented her with awesome-looking heavy-duty but lightweight Starlight armor, alongside a new energy-absorbing shield and a new weapon, the Blaster Lance. She looks wild and totally awesome, and I'm assuming, based on her in-game stats, that she's on par with her father ability-wise, but with the obvious technological enhancements. And at number 8, Zombie Hulk. Marvel Zombies isn't really a future story. Like, it sort of becomes one, but it isn't when it starts. Time is relative, so look. Basically, in the story, eventually the zombie Galacti, as in those zombified heroes who consumed the Silver Surfer and Galactus and gained the power cosmic, travel out into the universe and begin consuming worlds and galaxies. So much so that they consume everything until nothing is left. As you can imagine, that's the kind of thing that may take a while. Long enough to be considered the future? I shall allow you to debate below. This Hulk was a lead consumer in the team of cosmically powered zombie superheroes and villains. So much so that when they ran out of people to consume, zombie Thanos blamed Hulk for eating more than his fair share, to which zombie Hulk decided he had enough of Thanos and put him out of commission. Number 7. Lizard Hulk. In the alternate future of the Spider Island story, the whole of New York City has been taken over by a villain known as the Spider Queen. The Spider Queen has infected almost all inhabitants of the city, including all of the heroes, with a virus that turns them into mindless spider zombie-like slaves under her control. Luckily, there's a group of heroes who make a resistance to this villainous Spider Queen. Most notable among them would be Eugene Flash Thompson, or Agent Venom. Agent Venom eventually realizes that if he subjects some of these spider hybrid heroes to a different DNA tampering process, like for example the Lizard Serum or even the Green Goblin Serum, that it will override the spider transformation, effectively curing the patients. When a group of spider heroes, including the Spider Hulk, attack Agent Venom, he injects the Spider Hulk with the Lizard Serum, effectively turning him into a more giant and muscular Lizard Hulk. He got a tail, he got sharp teeth, he got scales, he a Lizard Hulk, baby!
Number 6. Stark Fujikawa. While Iron Man of Earth 928 appears to be dead, there is also the existence in this future of the Stark Fujikawa organization, one of the main corporations that rules over the future Earth, along with such powerful companies as Alchemex. While Tony Stark is not among the powerful heads of the company and is not the future CEO, presumed to be dead on Earth 928, in the alternate 2099 future reality of Earth 96099, Iron Man's likeness, at least, does live on. In this reality, Iron Man's likeness is used in advertising for the Stark Fujikawa organization, implying that Tony's future was somewhat tied to the company. At least, like I said, in this alternate 2099 reality, which isn't the main 2099 reality, but yeah, there are lots of alternate 2099 timelines. It's confusing. Although once again, we still don't really know the fate of Tony Stark even here, where his name and likeness still seem to reappear, but the rest is a mystery.
Number 4. Hulk The End. The End series chronicles the last days of various characters in the Marvel Universe. For a lot of doomsday type stories, it often ends in the Earth being destroyed in a nuclear war. But what remains after that? Well, basically, the Hulk remains. As the only human left on planet Earth, Bruce Banner wanders the wastes in an eternal struggle with himself, as in an eternal struggle with the Hulk. Basically, Bruce has seen the deaths of all those he loved, all those he cared about. There's nothing left in this world for him, and he would prefer to just pass on. But no matter what he does, the Hulk does not let him. Speaking of the big green Goliath, he thinks Banner's will to pass away is a puny human thought, and he wants to be the strongest there is and to just be left alone. The two of them have a huge internal falling out. Eventually, Bruce has a heart attack, and while Hulk himself goes on to survive somehow, he now realizes just how alone he really is. Damn. Number 3. Breaker of Worlds. The Breaker of Worlds Hulk first appeared in a kind of side story within the Immortal Hulk storyline. In an alternate timeline, the Immortal Hulk becomes possessed by the One Below All, who went rampaging until the end of time, and the end of this iteration of the multiverse. He has destroyed everything, literally everything. He has defeated Franklin Richards, Galactus, all the cosmic entities, and he's shattered planets and crushed stars with his bare hands. The story itself follows an alien that had explored out trying to find out if anything was left in the universe, and there wasn't. This alien is living in the 9th cosmos, meaning the 9th version of the multiverse after the Immortal Hulk / the One Below All destroyed the last version. This new 9th multiverse is in tatters though. The One Below All Hulk has consumed the souls of every being he has destroyed, bolstering his own power enough so that he is planet-sized and just flies around like a living curse, ending all things in existence until there is nothing left. Ever. Luckily, the alien sent a warning far into the past to the present time. The Breaker of Worlds is what happens when the One Below All wins, and it's not good. Number 2. Earth X. Captain America, in the not too distant alternate future of Earth X, was a bit more tragic. In this world, everyone was exposed to Terrigen mists, giving everyone powers and sort of denying the need for superheroes as much. On top of that, this Cap felt unworthy as he had actually separated the Red Skull from his head using his shield in an act of vengeance, causing him to step down from the Avengers out of shame. There's reason to believe this likely led to all the Avengers except Vision being defeated by Absorbing Man. So this Cap was a faded version of what he could have been, but he still had all the same powers and abilities and still fought against what was wrong and stood for what was right. He helped defeat an evil telepathic kid called the Skull and helped Mar-Vell create a paradise for deceased heroes. Although he did pass away, this Cap turned into one of Mar-Vell's avenging hosts, which were basically angels in the realm of the dead. He became an avenging angel, which is like a title I kind of hope to possess one day, but I probably won't. But his wings enabled him to fly. He could change his shape, but usually just look like his usual self. He was able to travel between the dimensions of the land of the dead to paradise, and from paradise to the antimatter sun of the negative zone. On top of that, Cap could also awaken the latent memories of those in the realm of the dead with a single touch. He also wielded this extremely cool sword, but we don't really know what its capabilities are. So, he is a much different Captain America with an extremely unique set of powers and abilities, but he's also one of the coolest. Number 1. James Newman. In 2007's Marvel Knights Captain America The Chosen, Steve Rogers' super soldier serum wore out after all the powerful and intense wars and battles he had been involved in over his unnaturally long life. He returned to his true self and became immortal again, growing old. Now, Rogers volunteered to use an experimental machine that would let him project his image remotely onto battlefields around the world as an inspirational figure to give soldiers hope and courage. And it did just that for the central hero of this comic, James Newman. He was inspired to do incredibly heroic and courageous stuff, even if he felt like he was kind of losing himself. After Steve Rogers' actual death, Steve's spirit possessed James during an incredibly intense firefight and fought in battles for as long as his country needed him, saying that his spirit was inside anyone who needed him. This one's a bit more idealistic, but it does perfectly represent Captain America and his ideals.
Number 10. Red Queen. This is an alternate version of Psylocke from Earth 811, the alternate universe belonging to Days of Future Past. In this reality, Psylocke became one of the baddies, and boy, does bad look good on her. Psylocke ended up joining the Hellfire Club and becoming their Red Queen. She has dark painted nails, a sick cape, and some really awesome thigh-high boots that look like they might be built into her costume. I am a sucker for really nice thigh-high boots. She wears a metal bikini over a seemingly sheer red bodysuit. She also appears to wear war paint or have gotten an epic red face tattoo, one or the other. Wolverine ends up defeating this version of Psylocke and handing her over to her brother, Brian Braddock, aka Captain Britain, in hopes that he can help to redeem her.
At number 9 is Super Batman. Not much is known about this guy other than that he was at one point part of the Superman squad. He is known as a mixture of two different heroic traditions, having descended from both the Superman and Batman families. Of course, he wears a uniform that marries the designs of both Batman and Superman costumes, and seems to have a combination of the two heroes' strengths as well. Sometime in the future, this guy is formed, and even though there's little known about him, I put him on the list because a hybrid of Superman and Batman must be pretty powerful to some crazy degree we would never understand.
Number 7. Justice League of Assassins. In the alternate future reality of Earth 14, the JLA is a little bit different. Instead of being the Justice League of America, they are known as the Justice League of Assassins, which still perfectly fits that same acronym, so yay, JLA. Like in the main reality, Batman also ends up joining this team. The world they live in seems to be a post-apocalyptic war zone when we see the JLA in issue number 15 of the 2016 Superman series. Despite their most valiant efforts, the Justice League of Assassins, including Batman, end up defeated and killed by the Prophecy. Batman actually ends up losing his head as a result of this fight. He's like the first one to go. Gets his head shot clean off. At least he still gets to finish what he was saying though, as his head pops off. Number 6. Helena Wayne. In the alternate future reality of Earth 2, it is Helena Wayne, Batman and Catwoman's daughter, who lives on to carry on the Batman legacy. Helena Wayne is often known by the name Huntress, not to be confused with Helena Bertinelli, the Huntress of the main continuity, but eventually goes on to take up her father's mantle of Batman. Yeah, not Batwoman, just Batman. Kinda love it. We haven't gotten to see too much of Helena's Batman in action, but I have always loved the idea of Catwoman and Batman settling down together and having a daughter who would one day be inspired to carry on their legacy and become a hero using either of their superhero names in their honor. Number 5. Dark Knight Returns. This is an older version of Bruce from Frank Miller's alternate future reality of Earth 31. Here Batman comes out of retirement when Harvey Dent returns. To make matters worse, the Joker also escapes custody. Not only does Batman have Dent, the Joker, and the criminal scum of Gotham to contend with, but Superman is also after him as well. In this reality, Superman had become a government hero, becoming the loyal ally to the President of the United States. Kind of like his guard dog, really. And the President of the United States does not take too kindly to Batman's return. In the end, the two must face off in a famous fight that would go on to inspire multiple narratives, including the Batman v Superman film from the DCEU. Number 4. Damian Wayne. One of the darkest Batmen to arise would be Damian Wayne's Batman. Damian takes up the cape and cowl in a possible future story featured in Batman issue 666. Get it? 666. Known as Batman in Bethlehem. Batman in Bethlehem is a story where in the future, Damian Wayne sells his soul to Satan in order to ensure Gotham's protection. This drastic measure happens in a world where people really are looking for some kind of security as climate change, war, and acts of terror threaten the entire planet, turning it into a hellish futuristic landscape. This future version of Damian, who becomes Batman, also seems to be impervious to gunfire and no longer restrains himself from killing those who oppose him. Kinda like my dad was here so that I could be this Batman later. I feel like Daddy Batman would not be too happy with you, Damian. He would be like, don't kill people, but you're gonna do what you're gonna do. I guess it's a different world. Number 3. Thomas Wayne. Although it might seem weird to put Thomas Wayne on this list as he's Batman's father and so in a way is part of his past, in the alternate future known as Flashpoint, Thomas actually becomes Batman instead of Bruce. This is after Bruce is killed, causing Thomas to make a plan to get vengeance and inspiring him to become a vigilante fighting for justice on the streets of Gotham. Martha, however, kinda goes the opposite way with it. The death of Bruce causes her to basically go insane. Unable to move on or let go, she ends up haunted by his memory and becomes the villain known as the Joker, becoming Thomas's sworn nemesis, despite the love that they once shared. What a tragic story.
At number 2 is the Superman from the Kingdom Come storyline. This iconic future version of Superman has to come out of retirement to protect the human race against a new, misguided group of younger super beings. A more grizzled, aged, and wise Superman, the Kingdom Come storyline brings a ton of humanity to the character as he faces the challenge of humbling himself and his allies in their older age. After a murderous superhero named Magog is acquitted of killing the Joker, Superman goes into hiding for 10 years, leaving Kansas to be overrun by a community of misguided superpowered beings. Having also lost Lois Lane, Superman becomes jaded, but ultimately comes out of hiding to reform the Justice League. On top of reforming a younger generation of misguided heroes though, and well, a brainwashed Captain Marvel, which adds a huge rut in the whole works, they have to also prevent the humans from dropping 3 massive nuclear bombs on Kansas, which are also superpowered to affect superpowered beings more than they originally would. This version of Superman shows a side to the hero that we are not used to, giving him a wiser, more jaded disposition. It really proves that doing the right thing is just in Kal-El's blood, no matter how much the world has betrayed him.
Number 1. Powergirl. So, I'm not about to talk about Earth 2 Powergirl here because that seems a little weird and wrong. Although many people think of Powergirl as an alternate version of Supergirl, she really is her own character. Now, of course, the continuity in DC can be very confusing because of all of the resets we've seen and had. But basically, just know that Earth 2, where Powergirl is from, is kind of like the home for the classic versions of superheroes, as established in 1961's Flash Volume 1, Issue 123, like Jay Garrick's Flash, Alan Scott's Green Lantern, old school Batman, and Superman. So to call Powergirl an alternate doesn't really do her justice. Which is why I'm going to talk here about one of her own hottest alternates from the series, Justice League The Nail. Powergirl is one of the hottest characters in the comic book world, so of course I could not leave her out of this list. This alternate version has a similar look to Powergirl when it comes to her costume and aesthetic, but with just a few little alterations making her costume a touch more racy. Now, I have always loved Powergirl's look because I feel like she is just so unashamed of her body, of what others think of the way that she dresses. That confidence that she exudes makes her one of the most sexy and attractive supers out there. Nothing looks sexier on a person than confidence.
Number 10, Hulk 2099. This is the only Hulk on this list that is not a Bruce Banner. No, this version of the Hulk is a guy named John Eisenhart. He was a corporate lawyer for big movie studios who went to manipulate a group called the Knights of Banner, who were a cult-like group of warriors who followed the ideologies of Bruce Banner. John was going to gain the rights for their name in order to make a movie about them, all while giving them nothing in return. He turns them into this corporation called Sweet Dreams, thinking they'll be brought in peacefully, but it doesn't go that way. The only Knight of Banner who survives, a kid, goes to a gamma machine, but John saves the kid, pushing him out of the way and being blasted with gamma radiation. John can turn into the Hulk whenever he wants. He has a super strong prehensile tongue, and he is much more beast-like with massive claws. He is just as powerful as the regular Hulk, but unfortunately, his comics were not popular enough to last more than 12 issues. Maybe he'll get a resurgence, I don't know. And at number 9, it's Age of Apocalypse Hulk. A world where the megalomaniacal apocalypse rose to power and mutants rule mercilessly while humans are treated like cattle. This version of Bruce Banner originally betrayed mankind, but after his experiments turned him into the Hulk, he fought for humans once again. This version of the Hulk starts off as the Grey Hulk, but is referred to as Thing until he saves Tony Stark, Gwen Stacy, and Victor Von Doom from a gamma nuke that he created that inadvertently goes off, forcing his transformation from Grey to Green Hulk. Now this guy is pretty much an equal to his normal 616 self, but once Weapon X becomes the ruler of this Earth, this Hulk is able to go toe to toe with him, shrugging off attacks and giving a hell of a fight for the crazy powerful mutant.
Number 8, Darkhold Iron Man. The Darkhold Iron Man tale gives us a glimpse into a dark alternate future for our hero. In this reality, when Tony Stark first makes the Iron Man suit, something in his programming basically goes wrong. This causes the suit to remove Tony's skin when it is put on and then removed. Tony learns this the hard way. While working on the suit to try and fix this issue, he feels a compulsion to put it on as though the suit is calling to him. And seemingly, without thinking, he finds himself doing so, eventually even putting on the helmet. The Iron Man suit works to remove Tony's skin and then eventually breaks down his skull and his bones, merging with him fully so that the suit can never actually be removed without killing Tony, because now they're kind of one being. But why would he ever want to remove this suit? Driven insane, in the end, Tony Stark believes that the Iron Man suit is actually the way of the future and offers one to every human, turning the population into a bunch of techno-organic iron suit human hybrid monster things permanently, including his friends and his loved ones who he also forces into suits. Ugh. Which would be really terrible because they know what's gonna happen. At least those people are unsuspecting and they're just like, ah, free iron suit, that sounds lovely. Let me run into this and see what happens. Better or worse, if you see it coming or if you're surprised by it. I don't know. I feel like if you see it coming, it's worse in my mind. Number 7, Earth 928 Iron Man. Earth 928 is widely accepted as the main continuity for Earth 2099. This is the same one that Miguel O'Hara, the main Miguel anyways, aka Spider-Man 2099, hails from. The sad reality is that in this continuity, there isn't really a future Iron Man to speak of. What we do learn about Tony Stark's future here is that the Doom of 2099, has dealt with Stark technology before, and that there is basically no alternate Iron Man within scanning distance of Flipside. Flipside appears in Spider-Man 2099, issue number 29, from the 90s, and appears to be scanning for copies of heroes of old so that it can basically copy their traits and abilities, adopting them to become a copy of them itself. Instead of running into any Earth 928 Iron Man though, Flipside ends up running into Miguel and becomes a copycat of Spider-Man 2099 instead. So like I said, as far as we know, there is no Iron Man 2099 in the main 2099 reality. There was a future for Tony, but we don't really know about it. We just know that he was there until he wasn't.
Number 6. Intelligent Design God Hulk from What If Planet Hulk. Most comic book readers, and especially fans of Marvel and the Hulk, know of the storyline where the Illuminati banished the Hulk from Earth to send him to another planet. He ended up crash landing on Sakaar and becoming a gladiator turned liberator turned ruler of the planet until his ship self-destructed, killing his family and bringing him back to Earth with a vengeance that no guilty person was safe from. What If Planet Hulk ends up asking the question, what if the Illuminati's banishment had hit its original target? In this story, Hulk lands on an incredibly peaceful and serene planet. And sure, he goes a bit ragey at first, but he eventually realizes the planet is inhabited by a race of peaceful creatures. Over long periods of time, the Hulk helps this race to evolve and become a thriving civilization. They end up viewing the Hulk as their god, and he basically acts as one that leads them to wealth and prosperity. It's one of the few Hulk stories that doesn't end in tears, and I'm more than happy to talk about it for that reason alone.
Number 5. Iron Man 2099. There are actually multiple Iron Man 2099s out there, but one of the most well-known ones is Dr. Sonny Frisco, who first appeared in the 2015 Secret Wars event, making his very first appearance in Secret Wars 2099 issue number 1. While 2099 is a future reality that has been around for some time in the comics, Dr. Sonny Frisco wouldn't appear until later in its continuity. Or a continuity, really. This also, once again, is not the main 2099 continuity. In fact, the 2099 reality actually has multiple different continuities. As I said, it's a lot, it's confusing, but just stick with me here. Frisco's Iron Man hails from one of the fringe continuities known as Earth 23291. Sonny Frisco, however, would later become displaced to the Realityverse 616, following the destruction and recreation of the multiverse as a result of the Secret Wars event. Like Tony Stark of Earth 616, Frisco is also a genius who built his own suit of armor and was a member of the 2099 Avengers, originally brought together by the CEO of Alchemex, Tyler Stone. At least, you know, in that alt 2099 reality. Number 4. Mc2 Tony Stark. In the alternate reality of Earth 982, known as Mc2, and not to be confused with the 2099 reality of Earth 928, even though those numbers are very similar, Iron Man ends up retiring. This Tony has a life similar to his 616 counterpart in most ways, with only a few differences between them. Namely, that Tony Stark in this reality decided to retire after an epic battle on an alternate Earth, which claimed the lives of many of his friends and fellow heroes, and left Scarlet Witch in a comatose state as a result of her sealing the portal between those two worlds. This devastating battle prompted Tony to retire, although he would seek out someone to carry on his legacy before doing so. Number 3. Mainframe. This is that legacy character for Tony Stark of the other main future reality for Earth 616, known as Mc2 Earth 982. Here in this reality, Tony Stark creates his own protege to carry on the Iron Man legacy, using his brain patterns or brain waves blended with an android modeled after his own armor. This android would be known as Mainframe. Mainframe was one of the original members of the Mc2 Future Avengers team, editorially known as A-Next, after the name of the comic series that the team appeared in. Mainframe initially was much more by the book as a hero, pretty rigid in their ways. Over time, however, the android would learn to loosen up somewhat and even be considered a close friend to many of his heroic colleagues on the superhero team.
Coming in at number 2 is Space Punisher Hulk. This version of the Hulk in the really awesome Space Punisher story is a 4-armed, 30-foot tall murderous monstrosity. He completely took out the Fantastic Four, he bit Sabretooth in half, took off Deadpool's head and threw him out into space, and he completely decimated a group of 6 Watchers, as in the race that Uatu the Watcher is a part of. And if you don't know, the Watchers are sort of on par in power to Galactus, so yes, this is pretty impressive. The future space version of the Hulk is more like an exoskeleton dimension, with Bruce Banner contained within the Hulk's chest, but they are still separate entities, allowing Punisher to end the life of Bruce Banner, which in turn allows the Hulk to just jump off into space and leave everyone alone. It's intense, it's really weird, it's extremely brutal as you'd expect from a Punisher story, and we love it. And coming in at number 1 is Maestro. If we are talking about alternate future versions of the Hulk, you'd be just a big ol' silly Billy if you thought we weren't gonna talk about the evil ruler of dystopia, the possible future version of the Hulk, Maestro. Maestro is the far future ruler of a megacity that rose up after the events of a nuclear war. After being exposed to so much extra radiation, he gained extra strength and over time became more and more intelligent. He had powered up enough to be double the strength of the base Hulk and just as smart as Bruce Banner, while also becoming nefariously evil. Earth 616 Hulk ends up traveling forward in time to stop Maestro, which proves to be a much more difficult task than he initially imagined. Hulk's experience with Maestro gave Hulk nightmares of what he could become for years and years and years to come into the future.
Starting us off in at number 10, Galactus, the Butcher of Worlds. The immensity of Galactus is already scary to some readers as is, but this famous Marvel antagonist has been depicted over the years in alternate universes to have some of the most terrifying aesthetics and dispositions outside his already overwhelming original persona. Galactus, the Butcher of Worlds is one of those alternate identities from a future timeline. From Earth 14412, appearing as part of the Marvel Now line in Thor God of Thunder issue 19, this Black Galactus has Thor to thank for his transformation. As the story goes, a millennia into the future after the Earth has died out, Galactus returns to consume the planet. But Thor, now King Thor, is still kicking around and protecting Midgard. He gets nostalgic about Earth and fights Galactus, preventing him from consuming the planet. In the process, Thor uses the all-black Necro Sword, which was previously used by Gore the God Butcher, and Galactus retreats, eating Mars instead. Except now the Necro Sword has manifested itself inside of him, which drastically changes him into this. In at number 9, Kang the Conqueror. Kang the Conqueror is largely known for his time-traveling shenanigans, and perhaps is the first villain that comes to mind when you think of comic time travelers. Now, because of his time traveling, we've seen multiple iterations of him over the years, including the most recent Iron Lad. Created by Stan Lee and Jack Kirby, Kang is a fellow named Nathaniel Richards, a 31st century scholar who has a genius level intellect and is an expert in history. He is also possibly a descendant of Reed Richards, and becomes fascinated by time travel technology created by Dr. Doom. He decides to travel back in time and becomes a pharaoh, and the Fantastic Four, who were time displaced at that time, a lot of time, defeated him. Then, a year later, he appeared in the Avengers issue 8, now fully as Kang, and got into a kerfuffle with the team. Armed with 40th century technology, he's got armor that enhances his strength, he has energy, force field, and hologram projection abilities, his suit has 30 days of food and air supplies, and he can control other forms of technology. Also, he's super resistant to radiation, which probably comes in handy in the future. The Earth is dying. And at number 8, Bullseye. Bullseye first debuted in 1976 in Daredevil issue 131, and ever since he's proven how lethal of an assassin he can be. While his presence would have any superhero on guard in general, there's a version of him from the future that is arguably even more scary than the Bullseye that we're familiar with in the regular Marvel 616 continuity. This Bullseye is an older version who appeared in Old Man Hawkeye. He's clearly been through the ringer, now boasting cybernetic components on his body, with one bit of tech replacing his left eye and another replacing his right hand. Now in this timeline, he works for Red Skull and has been aching to kill a superhero. As he notes, it's been 41 years, 7 months, and 26 days since he's killed his last. Not like he's counting or anything.
Number 7, Dr. Doom. Weirdly enough, in a way, Dr. Doom is also a villain from the future, as he does like to travel back to the past to enact some villainous plots. He traveled back in time to study with Morgan Le Fay, and he's also gone back in time as well with Iron Man to the period of Arthurian legend. One of his most iconic plots in my mind as well was when he wanted to use the Fantastic Four to help him steal Blackbeard's treasure by traveling back in time and recovering it, which seems like a really easy way to possibly mess up the timeline for a reward that somehow, I don't know, it doesn't really seem worth all that trouble. I know it's a chest of treasure, Doom, historical pirate treasure no less, but is it really worth possibly changing the future for? And messing with time? I don't know. Number 6, Monarch. Monarch is another villain from the future who actually, it turns out, was originally a hero. I love these reveals, especially when you are the hero finding out that you become the villain. Gasp. Monarch is actually Hank Hall, who ends up becoming a villain in a dystopian future after his partner Dove dies. For those who don't know, Hank Hall is the hero Hawk of the superhero duo Hawk and Dove. Hank wouldn't be the only hero to become known as the future villain Monarch. In fact, it seems likely much of the villainy behind Monarch comes from the suit that Hank and later Captain Atom wear while donning that mantle. In fact, in the case of Captain Atom, it seems the suit is very much to blame here. Suit making people evil and crazy. Number 5. Nimrod. Nimrod has become even more intense in the last few years, managing to make the overall silly sounding name of Nimrod strike fear into the hearts of mutants and X-Men fans everywhere. Nimrod, despite actually often being associated with the idea of someone being inept here in North America, is actually a word in a literary sense that can mean a skillful hunter, which actually makes it, I think, a very fitting name for Nimrod. But yeah, I didn't know that even until I was writing this, and then I was like, oh. Does sound silly though, ya Nimrod. Skillful Hunter is definitely what Nimrod themselves has become associated with in terms of all the crazy stuff they've done. The Nimrod of Days of Future Past, Earth 811, is a type of Sentinel that originally traveled back in time to fulfill its mission of destroying the X-Men. In a past future viewed in Powers of X, we also learned that Nimrod has the potential to be the end of mutant kind and humankind as we know it. Humans basically become tools to be used by Nimrod to destroy mutants, and mutants are all but extinct in this future. Number 4. Extant. The thing about time-traveling characters is that you can have a few different versions of them, whether that be in one single timeline or across multiple timelines. In the case of Extant though, we are fortunately keeping things pretty linear thus far on this list. Extant is actually the name that Hank Hall took up after his Monarch persona, and if you thought Monarch was bad, Hank Hall's Extant is arguably worse. Extant is Monarch, but now not only advanced, but with the ability to time travel. He teams up with Hal Jordan's Parallax, and the two villains plan to take control of time itself so that they might manipulate it as they so desire, altering reality itself.
Up next, number 2, Electro 2099. This version of Electro from Earth TRN 590 is absolutely terrifying. He operates in the year of 2099 AD and was an android construction worker. When his bosses were displeased with his work, they decided to give him over to torture experimenters. Now during these experiments, his obedience chips were burnt out, which made him into a sentient robot. And then a generator gave him the power to conduct electricity, turning him into a supervillain that would then go on to join up with the Sinister Six in that timeline. He's capable of electrokinesis, energy absorption, can inflict hyperacusis, which makes everyday noises much louder and painful, and he can fly. And while those are rather deadly tricks to have up one's sleeve, it's really his aesthetic that lands this android villain towards the top of our list. And finally, in at number 1, Time Trapper. Time Trapper straight up looks like the Grim Reaper. This villain, hailing from DC Comics, first appeared in Wonder Woman issue 101 in 1958 as Time Master. Get it? Time Master. See what you guys did there, DC. His name would be later redefined in Adventure Comics 317 in 1964. So, what does this fellow do? He has vast control over time itself, specifically over future time, and can freeze it, alter it, separate parts of it to create his own pocket dimensions, yet he cannot alter present time events. Now, originally a robed warlord from the very distant future, he commanded a large number of slaves and placed Wonder Woman and Steve Trevor into a diabolical funhouse that consisted of various disasters throughout history. Over the years, he has had some contradictory origin stories come out of the woodwork, but overall, he remains a mysterious and deadly character who is often depicted as a fascist and primarily an enemy of the Legion of Superheroes.
Number 10. Savior. Savior is a future version of Tim Drake who becomes Batman. Doesn't sound so villainous, right? Well, this future Bat version of Timothy Drake takes things a little too far, which is what makes him more villainous than heroic, despite taking up his own version of the cape and the cowl. Drake in the Titans Tomorrow reality is known by the vigilante codename of Savior, and has gone to extremes to do what he believes is right, meaning that Drake doesn't hold back and kills villains or even heroes who get in his way, eliminating them permanently. Drake and the world were seemingly transformed by a crisis event. In addition, Batman was also killed by Batwoman, which heavily shaped the life of Tim Drake in this reality, who would then do what he swore he would never do and continue on the Batman legacy in Bruce's place. Number 9. King Thanos. King Thanos is an alternate version of Thanos who hails from a pretty terrible future where he has successfully destroyed almost all life in the universe in an attempt to win the favor of Lady Death. In this universe, Frank Castle also becomes Ghost Rider after being killed and then making a deal to become Ghost Rider, returning to Earth in an attempt to avenge the fallen heroes of Earth, only to return too late, with Earth pretty much being decimated by Thanos already. As Ghost Rider, Castle lost his mind from loneliness, but would later have no other choice left but to become the Herald of King Thanos. King Thanos actually has a few people left to kill and needs help, so he actually sends Cosmic Ghost Rider, aka Frank Castle, back in time for a younger version of himself to basically help him in his final battle. And friends, before we move on to this next spot, if you are loving this list and you want more time travel, future-based lists, be sure to let us know by giving this video a thumbs up. Number 8. Kronos. Kronos is a somewhat confusing character in DC continuity because there are multiple versions of him, and this confusion isn't entirely the fault of alternate futures or time travel either. It's actually more to do with the trajectory of the DC main continuity. Kronos, not to be confused with Kronos, no H, back in the New Earth continuity was known to be a clock-obsessed villain of Ray Palmer's Captain Atom. However, his clock obsession would soon develop into an obsession to perfect the means of time travel, and this obsession would translate to his Prime Earth continuity counterpart, who was an agent of Argus specializing in, you guessed it, time travel. There is also another version of Kronos, which is an entirely different person, Walker Gabriel, who found Clinton's tech and then more used it to become an anti-hero instead of like a full-blown villain.
Moving on to number 7, Mortis. Putting a Mortis on this list is kind of cheating. He's actually a future version of another villain on this list who comes from the future and is a time traveler, aka Kang the Conqueror. Mortis first appeared in Avengers issue 10, 2 issues after his past self Kang debuted in that series. He came to be when Kang grew weary of time travel and was frustrated at the loss of his son Marcus. Marcus is a dick, FYI. That's for another list though. He's approached by the extraterrestrial timekeepers, a group of time-traveling aliens who are from the end of the universe and are the last living creatures in existence. They ask him to work for them, preserving timelines rather than conquering them, and in exchange he'll be given immortality. Kang reinvents himself as a Mortis and rules over the other dimensional realm of Limbo. Now it's worth noting that Mortis and Kang come from diverging timelines, so they are technically not the same guy, although technically they are. Alternate versions, woo! Up next at 5, Maestro. Maestro is a terrifying future version of the Hulk who first appeared in the Incredible Hulk Future Imperfect issue 1 in 1992. He is the product of a nuclear war that pretty much wiped out most of Earth's superhumans, leaving the rest of the globe on the brink of extinction. But Maestro doesn't need to worry about dying. He survived the blast and the radiation, although he has the latter to thank for becoming insane. His bitterness towards the rest of the world has been amplified, and he rules over this future world, having collected relics of previous superpowered individuals as if they were trophies. All in all, he's evil as hell, and is exactly the nightmarish version of the Hulk that many in the Marvel Universe hope will never see the light of day in the main continuity. Even though he technically did appear in the main continuity. But like, you know, as a bigger threat to like the entire universe, not just Bruce Banner. Anyway, in at 4, Master Mold. Master Mold first hit the scene in the X-Men issue 15 in 1965. His primary purpose was to be a portable sentinel creating factory, with robotic sentinels being the ones who hunted down the mutants instead of him. He is without a doubt a scary creation and is way more than a glorified factory, having superhuman strength, speed, reflexes, and durability. He can dish out concussive blasts, plasma discharges, and he can fly and scan mutants. He can also self-repair, speak, and has been equipped with powerful weapons to defend itself. Now, in the Second Coming storyline, Master Mold from the Days of Future Past timeline sends Nimrod sentinels into the present day via a temporal portal, and these sentinels are rather beastly. Being the most superior force in that timeline, the robots Master Mold created have devastating effects, and the X-Force find themselves traveling into the future in order to stop it.
Number 2, Professor Zoom. Professor Zoom is Eobard Thawne, the main villain of Barry Allen's The Flash, who traveled back in time just to mess with the Flash's life. That's how much he hates him. He has also been known as Reverse Flash before in the comics. Eobard Thawne hails from the future of the 25th century in DC Comics, being a very fast speedster powered by the negative speed force. There is much that Eobard can do and accomplish as a villain. Aside from traveling back in time and to other dimensions, he can use his super speed to not only be super fast, but also be super powerful in battle, as his speed also inherently gives him super strength. He also possesses the ability to heal and the ability to manipulate manipulate molecules, allowing him to phase through things. Despite being a villain in the New Earth continuity, Thawne even used his molecular manipulation powers at one point to save the DC universe, which I think makes you pretty powerful, in my mind.
Number 10, Contest of Champions. Venom is the antithesis to Peter Parker when you think about it. I read somewhere, I can't remember where, that Venom is essentially what happens when someone acquires great power without possessing the great responsibility to keep it in check. And I like that. The two have an epic rivalry, but in Contest of Champions, yes, the Marvel fighting game, fans were introduced to a Venom from an alternate Earth that had managed to finally take down his first host and #1 enemy, Spider-Man. He went a little crazy off the victory over his longtime adversary and took the Spider-Man suit from Spider-Man's body and started to wear it around his neck as a tiny little cape. It's almost kinda cute, if not a little horrifying. He is a Venom that ultimately completed his #1 goal. He's living life as a fully realized Venom, just thriving. You go, Venom. You go. Number 9, Mech Venom. I'm not entirely sure that this is a future world, but the technology would suggest so. In an alternate reality Earth, 14512, a reality of giant robots and giant morbid monsters, the armored hero SP-4-4-DR, or Penny Parker, fights for peace and justice. Seeking to replicate the success of the SP-4-4-DR mech, the Venom, which is spelled VEN #M suit, is created. That's really confusing. Oh well. Combining a biomechanical sim engine with bleeding edge robotics. Get it? Sim engine? Like symbiote? Nice. Wordplay. Ultimately, during a crisis with the Morbius kaiju, the suit goes rogue, very rogue, and assimilates its pilot, young Addie Brock, plus Penny's Aunt May. The suit becomes a frightening, downright unstoppable threat to the world. Venom is a threat all on its own before it becomes a giant mech suit, so this is pretty bad. Number 8, more robots. Speaking of giant robotic mechs, in Megamorphs, Marvel's seriously obvious attempt to sell some toys, Iron Man recruited heroes such as Spider-Man, the Hulk, and Ghost Rider to aid him in battling the forces of evil using giant, eerily Transformer-like robots. Each of these giant robots, that also kind of remind me of Power Rangers, is unique to and powered by each hero. Unfortunately, villains got their hands on the tech as well that created the mechs, and a few have their own. Bet you can't guess who has one. Yes, obviously it's Venom. God, you read the title? Dr. Doom recruits a team of villains to jump into their own giant robots to fight the do-gooders. And Venom pilots the Spider Smasher, a massive robot similar in style and color scheme to Venom with cool Venom-based abilities. It can also transform to be more spider-like as well. When it first shows up, it does battle with the Thing, almost losing before it makes its escape.
Number 7, Agent Deadpool. This Deadpool is never really given a name like most alternates who appear as a member of the evil Deadpool Corps. However, he does seem to have some pretty fancy tech and the ability to body slide and, I would assume, potentially time slide. He appears in Deadpool Kills Deadpool, a series by Cullen Bunn where Dreadpool seeks to create his own team of evil Deadpools so that he might use them to wipe out every Deadpool in the Marvel multiverse. Dreadpool, by the way, is the same version of Deadpool known for killing the entire Marvel universe. Agent Deadpool, as I've chosen to call him, is one of Dreadpool's agents who appears in the first issue of Deadpool Kills Deadpool. He takes out Headpool, Golden Age Deadpool, and sadly, Dogpool, before Deadpool of the main reality of Earth 616 avenges their deaths by killing Agent Deadpool in turn, using Agent Deadpool's own anti-regeneration or anti-Deadpool ray. Number 6, Eternity Deadpool. This Deadpool only makes a brief appearance in Doom War issue number 5. Here, Deadpool is recruited into a mission to help retrieve the 10,000 tons of vibranium that Dr. Doom stole from Wakanda. When Deadpool passed through the Nowhere Room, he's turned temporarily into a kind of a splat of goo and organs. I say temporarily because, well, he's Deadpool, so he does get better because he got that healing factor. And quite quickly too, I will say. During this time, however, we also get a glimpse into multiple alternate versions of Deadpool from the multiverse, one of which happens to be a version in which Deadpool goes on to become the new Eternity. Number 5, Old Head Deadpool. This alternate version of Deadpool comes from the Wastelanders or Old Man Logan reality of Earth 807128. Here, Deadpool appears to have survived the uprising of supervillains, destruction of the Earth, and post-apocalyptic setting of this continuity. At least, His head did. We see him as a head in a jar in Wastelander's Hawkeye, where he is kept in a bar that Juggernaut frequents, and is potentially the boss of? Although he no longer has a body, this merc still has kept his mouth, and still uses it to crack wise at almost any opportunity that presents itself. Number 4. Deadpool 2099. Deadpool 2099 is Werda Wilson, the daughter of Shikla and Deadpool. While in 2099, Deadpool also exists, although it is actually Werda who holds her father hostage, along with Emily Preston, the adoptive mother of Eleanor Preston, who is also Deadpool's daughter. Werda kidnaps them both in hopes of finding out what happened to her mother, Shikla, who basically went missing. While she is the daughter of Deadpool, Wade never really knew about her until then because Shikla and Deadpool split up before she was born, and Shikla basically decided to keep Werda's existence a secret from Wade. Like her dad, this future legacy version of Deadpool, Werda Wilson, also has a healing factor.
Number 3. Venom as an acronym. Earth 138 is one of many realities that is shown to us in the Spider-Verse event. The President of the United States in this reality is Norman Osborn, who is also still the CEO of Oscorp. And what do you know? Oscorp in this reality also created Venom, as in V-E-N-O-M, like an acronym, which stands for Variable Engagement Neurosensitive Organic Mesh. So it's a bioweapon, one that President Osborn gives to his lackeys. Even he himself dons the dark creation, so we have an army of Venom-powered soldiers led by a Venom-powered President Norman Osborn. But who opposes this government Venom villain army? Well, this is the story where we get Spider-Punk and all his followers. Fighting for their beliefs, the Spider Army is a group of punks ready to stand their ground, and Spider-Man is their punk rock leader. Unfortunately for Osborn, their V-E-N-O-M is just as weak to sound as the Venom we all know and love, and we are shown this when Spider-Punk plays his electric guitar at full volume, completely blasting away the symbiotes as the two groups clash. Heck yeah. Number 2. Earth X. Earth 999, a world where basically every single person has powers. Things have gone apocalyptic, and the daughter of Peter Parker, May Parker, is in possession of the Venom symbiote. While her retired and cynical pops ain't too thrilled about it, she does actually have complete control over the symbiote thanks to her advanced and honed spider sense. She was eventually under the control of this kid going by the name of Red Skull, and thanks to her father and other Earth X classic heroes, she was saved. Venom and her father, Spider-Man, go on to join the superpowered police force and fight crime and supervillain threats together. She eventually, after the death of Death, goes on to be recruited by Kang the Conqueror as part of a multiversal team to fight the Apocalypse twins. In addition to her proportional spider powers plus the enhanced spider sense, she gains all the usual symbiote powers plus a few extra, like what seems to be a rudimentary form of telepathy. And 'tis believed her symbiote could go on to mutate further to gain more powers, which is a good way for Marvel to say, we can do whatever we want with this. She's definitely one of the cooler incarnations of Venom. Number 1. Reign. 35 years have passed. Spider-Man is an old, retired man. Mary Jane Watson has passed away. New York is under the control of dictator Mayor Waters and his police force called Reign. But unbeknownst to most, it was actually Venom who had been pulling the strings, taking the position of aide to the mayor in the body of the cowardly Edward Sachs. This version of Venom is much more brooding, maniacal, and downright dastardly than his mainline counterpart, plotting and scheming for years for the eventual return of his rival Spider-Man. Venom is a bitter old symbiote ever since Spider-Man retired, feeling abandoned by the hero, and he cannot wait to get his hands back on him. He has replicated himself thousands of times, put together the Sinister Six, and has trapped the citizens of New York in the city with his security system known as Web, all for the eventual return of his nemesis. All that, and he is still defeated at the end of the comic. Or is he?
Number 10. Ultimate Deadpool. While the Ultimate timeline is said to be parallel to the 616 main continuity timeline, technically the Ultimate continuity of Earth 1610 is still set in the future by comparison. The Ultimate line was actually meant to shake things up, chiefly by giving stories a more updated and modern setting. That was one of the major ways it differed, as its continuity didn't extend back to the 1960s and further back beyond that. Add in the fact that the Ultimate version of Deadpool is later revealed to be a cyborg, having fully converted to match match their fellow Reaver brethren, and you have a pretty futuristic version of Deadpool here. Basically, evil robot Deadpool in this universe. Number 9. Horsemen of Apocalypse. In this alternate reality of Earth 16558, Deadpool was chosen to become a Horseman of Apocalypse. Here, Deadpool was ordered to join the rest of the Horsemen in defeating and destroying the young X-Men who were trespassers in their home of Omega World, and retrieving the Ark that they carried with them, which held within it hundreds of mutant embryos. In this reality, many of Apocalypse's choices for his Horsemen are actually not really mutant in origin. Also on this deadly team is Venom and Moon Knight. Later, Colossus, who attempts to buy time for the young X-Men, is also recruited into their ranks, being the only technical mutant other than Apocalypse on the team. And friends, before we move on to this next spot, if you are loving this list and you want more Deadpool lists or more future alternate versions lists, be sure to let us know by clicking that like and commenting below. Also, if you haven't already, go follow us on Facebook. We got some cool stuff for you over there. Number 8. Deadman Wade. Deadman Wade appears in the Age of Apocalypse alternate future reality. Here, Apocalypse succeeds in taking over the world, and Deadpool is recruited into becoming one of his Pale Riders. In this reality, Deadpool is not much of a jokester, but instead is extremely sad and quite depressed. As a Pale Rider, he is constantly mistreated by Danny Moonstar, his teammate, who is also part of the Pale Riders in this reality. Deadpool in this reality is rapidly decaying, which causes him to feel immense pain, almost all the time. In the end, he is killed by Nightcrawler, who teleports his head away from his body to do so. Deadman Wade, however, would later be resurrected and would go on to join the evil Deadpool Corps, appearing alongside them in the series Deadpool Kills Deadpool.
Number 7. Old Man Hawkeye / Logan. Old Man Logan is an insanely graphic and fresh take on the Marvel Universe. It's set in a post-apocalyptic America where the villains of the Marvel Universe coordinated a simultaneous attack on the heroes orchestrated by none other than the Red Skull. There's a gang of Jewish Hulks, a giant skeleton of Loki crushed by the Baxter Building, old versions of superheroes and supervillains, and a Venom symbiote bonded with a T-Rex from the Savage Land. Even though this Venom only showed up for a little brief moment in the Old Man Logan storyline, Venom Rex instantly became a fan favorite character, which meant we got to see how this came to be in the follow-up, or I guess the prequel, Old Man Hawkeye. In this story, we see a Venom who bonds to the Madrox gang, who have kind of separated from James Madrox, sort of, but not really, doesn't really matter. But after Venom bonded to the Madrox, they now use their power to duplicate themselves into an army of Venoms vowing to track down Hawkeye, who had stuck the other Madrox members with plenty of arrows. An army of Venoms chasing you across the country would be pretty terrifying. After hunting down Clint to Kate Bishop's sanctuary, the two heroes led the Venom army into the wilds where it reduced its number, but then a random T-Rex from the Savage Land attacked the symbiote? I don't know. If you read Old Man Logan, you know that this is the exact same Tyrannosaurus that attacks Logan and Clint. And now, we've come full circle. Number 6. More of the same? And we return to Wolverine Old Man Logan, the same series as the previously mentioned T-Rex, except 15 years later and in the Edge of Venomverse 4, where things are now decidedly worse for the feral hero. The baby Hulk Logan took from the Hulk gang, Banner Jr., grew up a bit, and after Logan told him what happened to his family, the little Hulk beat the snot out of Logan. After Archangel, Banner Jr., and Ashley Barton capture Logan in the danger room of the X-Men mansion, they unveil that that dang venomized T-Rex yet again is alive. Logan is able to defeat Ashley, but when he attempts to take on the Venomsaurus Rex, that's what I'm gonna call it, he instead finds himself leaping down its throat. Banner Jr. is mid-celebration when suddenly the symbiote changes sides, de-bonds from the T-Rex, and takes over Logan. Logan escapes the beast as his Venom self and goes after his two captures. He defeats Archangel, and then just as he's about to finish off Banner Jr., he claims he can't, and that he kept the truth of his family from him because he loves him like a son, all while a portal randomly appears, bringing this Venom Wolverine face to face with the Venom Captain America of the Resistance in the Edge of Venomverse story arc. Number 5, 2099. The Earth of Spider-Man 2099 is pretty awesome. Cyberpunk themes, President Doom, Miguel O'Hara as Spider-Man with the awesome suit. It shouldn't be any surprise that the Venom of 2099 is just as awesome, and kinda scary. So long that it has evolved to have new abilities like acid blood and spit. This version of the symbiote bonded itself to Kron Stone, the son of Tyler Stone and the elder half-brother of Miguel O'Hara, bringing Venom and the Spider-Man even closer than their modern day equivalents. The symbiote first appears when it tries to kill Tyler in the hospital, and that is when Spider-Man intervenes. The fight goes on for a long time, like several issues long, with Venom even taking Spider-Man's former lovers. After Miguel learnt of Venom's weakness to sound, sonic sounds were emitted all over the city, stunning Venom, allowing Spider-Man to beat him, revealing Crom's identity. Later, the symbiote would merge with Roman the Submariner and flee to the ocean. Wow. Number 4. Aaliyah Bell. Kron Stone isn't the only person to bond to the Venom symbiote in the world of 2099. Aaliyah Bell had an injury on her left arm that she got in a terrible accident as a child. Now as a teenager, the corporation Alchemax had Aaliyah undergo an experimental treatment that would fix her disfigurement. Only what she didn't know is that Alchemax had actually bonded her with a piece of the Venom symbiote and had intended to make her a super soldier. Just like the Venom everyone loves, Aaliyah pleaded with the symbiote to become a hero with their abilities instead of being a monster and eating people. Venom agreed, but the pair start receiving dark visions of the symbiote god Null still being alive on Earth.
Number 3. Legacy Deadpool. Deadpool has more than one daughter actually. He also has Ellie Camacho, also known in this future as Eleanor Preston. She is the adopted daughter of Deadpool and Emily Preston in the future of Earth 16356, the same reality that Warda is also existing in. Here Ellie ends up manifesting immortality powers, with her basically regenerating upon her death, being reborn with all of her prior memories, but basically reset to look as she did when her powers first manifested. In other words, she becomes a teenager physically again, and then grows from there whenever she dies. Ellie has always been one of my favorites when it comes to heroes kids out there, and although I loved Shikla and Deadpool together, I have always preferred Ellie to their daughter, Warda. Ellie takes up her father's mantle and is known by the codename Deadpool in this reality. Deadpool Ellie goes on to fight against her half-sister, Deadpool Warda, in the future, who is also of course known as Deadpool 2099, one of them. Number 2. Future X-Men. During Battle of the Atom, a future Deadpool appears as part of the Future X-Men team. He is there in an attempt to send the all-new X-Men, or past X-Men, back to their time, convincing them to return, where they belong. This alternate version of Wade also seems to be a fan of Gold Balls. He claims in the future that Gold Ball's apparently a legend and asks for his autograph, though I don't know if he's joking. In reality, the X-Men team that he is a part of is not really a future X-Men team, but is instead a future Brotherhood of Evil Mutants team. Ha ha ha. Led by the evil son of Professor X and Mystique, Charles Xavier II, and the evil son of Wolverine and Mystique, Reyes. Number 1. Days of Future Past. Deadpool managed to retcon an old future version of himself into Days of Future Past, and appears in Cosmic Ghost Rider's story, where he himself is doing some meddling in the future timeline, which for him is currently the past. Does that make sense? Or have I lost you yet? I feel like time travel, we lose everyone at some point. Still, Cosmic Ghost Rider decides to call it the future to simplify, so I think it's fair that we do so too. Here, Deadpool appears to have somehow become the leader of the X-Men. His original plan was to send Kitty Pryde back in time, but when Cosmic Ghost Rider steals the valuable jammer component she was meant to transport to help prevent the bleak dystopian future, Deadpool decides to send Cosmic Ghost Rider back in time instead. This all goes down in the series Cosmic Ghost Rider Destroys Marvel History in issue number 3. What is your favorite future alternate version of Deadpool? Do you like when Deadpool gets all timey-wimey with his alternates, or do you just prefer when they are just from alternate worlds and have just distinct differences, like Lady Deadpool or Evil Deadpool or Panda Deadpool? Panda Pool?